Thank you all so much for joining us today for our Foundations of Global Health. I am Alexis Smith, and I am the International Partnerships and Programs Coordinator with the Office of International Programs. Global health is a varied and exciting field to which many healthcare providers, researchers, and faculty aspire to being professionally engaged. With our being a globally connected world and with COVID-19 uniting the world to solve an issue, global health has never been more relevant. This year-long programming is designed to feature our experts in the field of global health, KUMC's faculty, researchers, and clinicians, our international partners, and our community partners. Each presenter will share their personal journey, educational background, mentors, books and articles that gave inspiration, challenges, lessons learned, successes, epiphanies, life-changing moments, and the heartbreaks. We have a few objectives for our series. The learner will gain foundational information on pathways into global health and will be challenged to deepen knowledge on equality and mutualism, which garners true collaboration and global health exchange for everyone's equal benefit. The learner will examine existing attitudes around global health so that we at the University of Kansas Medical Center are trendsetters who move beyond the us versus them, haves versus have-not mentality. The learner will be able to appraise global health, including global health research, philosophy, approaches, attitudes, and the varied efforts in the areas of health disparities, health inequities, and community health. As a plug for our next presentation, it will be a global health career chat with Dr. Helander Mengat of the Department of Neurology, Division of Neurocritical Care, and that will be on Wednesday, November 10th, also at noon. I now have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Mische Lawson. Dr. Mische Lawson is a recreational therapist with over 20 years experience promoting adaptive and inclusive recreation for individuals with disabilities with specific expertise in aquatics and autism. Dr. Mische Lawson's international experience includes a year studying in the Netherlands during her undergraduate education and a Fulbright Specialist project in 2019, providing training and support to build research at a university in Mische, Kyrgyzstan. She also mentored a Fulbright Dissertation Award for a PhD student from Brazil to study at the University of Kansas Medical Center. And now, without further ado, Dr. Mische Lawson.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you for that introduction. I am in the Occupational Therapy Education Department, and my expertise and experience is in inclusive and adaptive recreation, specifically autism and aquatics with individuals with autism. And the reason I share that is because I'm going to talk today about the Fulbright Specialist Program, and Fulbright Specialist Program matches people based on areas of expertise. So that area is mine, but I also wanted to share that my international drive and interest came from being a military child and getting to travel the world with my family, and specifically being in Germany when I started kindergarten and having some good experiences there, and has kind of developed over time. And was very fortunate to hear our dean, Dean Ekin-Wunton, come back from Iceland and talk about his Fulbright Specialist experience, and it made it seem really realistic and possible for me as well. So I'm excited to talk to you about that today. The Fulbright program itself is the flagship international academic exchange program. It's sponsored by the US government, and it fosters mutual understanding between the United States and other countries. It's been around since 1946. And it has over a dozen programs. Some of them are for students, some of them are for professionals, some of them are for academics. I think the one that people know most is the Fulbright Scholar Program. And that is typically an academic exchange that occurs for an entire semester or year, where someone engages in teaching or research with a host institution for a long period of time to complete a planned project. And that is something that I aspire to, but as you can imagine, those are those are challenging to coordinate because it's difficult to be away from your home institution to have the resources and support to do that for that period of time. So the Fulbright Specialist Program is a shorter program. It is 2 to 6 weeks. 6 weeks is the max. You're matched with a host institution. And the goal is to, and excuse me while I read this because I don't want to misrepresent, but the goal is to share expertise, strengthen institutional linkages, hone skills, gain international experience, and learn about other cultures while building institutional capacity. And there are currently 162 countries that are part of the Fulbright Specialist Program. And so there are year-round opportunities, and you can plan your project to go at different time periods based on your needs, your home institution's needs, or the host institution's needs. And it really is a great way to have a Fulbright experience without having to commit to a full year. There are currently 3 ways to get matched, and that's kind of the graphic that you see on the bottom right hand of the screen. A host country submits a project, and a project gets approved by their home country, and they can search the specialist roster for someone with your expertise, and they can invite you to come complete a project. That's one way. You can, if you already have some existing partnerships or work going on, you can develop a project together and propose it. I know when I first got on the roster, our own international office helped me reach out and kind of pitch myself to some of the places that we have relationships with. And then there's something that's a little bit newer with the Fulbright program where you can answer an open call. And this is where a host institution puts a project into Fulbright and has specific objectives in mind, and you can apply to that particular project. And that is how I actually got matched. So a little bit about my experiences. Can you advance to the next slide? My original title, I was going to give a talk similar to this in February, and I had to reschedule, unfortunately, but my original title was going to be a career chat talking about adaptability for maximizing global experiences and impact, and adaptability being that key thing. I mentioned my interest in international learning and partnerships came from my time my family's time in the military and being in Germany. And I really wanted to study abroad in Germany. And I took German classes in high school and in college and was really excited about that and just couldn't make that work. It was very expensive at the time I was going to travel. My German skills were not as great as I thought they were. So it just wasn't a match for me. So I actually went to the Netherlands instead. I didn't really know anything about the Netherlands. My degree program, which my bachelor's degree was in parks, recreation, and tourism with an emphasis in recreational therapy, established a brand new program. And so I was one of the first Americans to go over in this program. My other thing was that I really wanted to go for a year, but it was a semester-long program. And so I had to be a little bit flexible again and decided, okay, a semester will be okay. And I got there and it wasn't enough. And so I really, really worked with my institution, the institution where I was studying, to stay for another semester. And I had to take all of my courses in Dutch, having only been there for 4 months, and brand new language, and made it work. It was okay. I'd also spent all my money and worked as a housekeeper so that I could afford to stay. So sometimes you just have these experiences and you make them work. And I think my Fulbright experience has been a little bit that way, needing to be flexible. The things I knew were Australia has fantastic adapted aquatics, and I would love to go and be matched there and learn as much as I share my own expertise. There were lots of countries I knew about and thought might be interesting to work with. The project that I matched with, or the project that I answered the open call to, was actually in Kyrgyzstan, in Kyrgyz Republic. And the first reaction was, I don't even know where this place is. And then I probably had a reaction similar to many other Americans, in that it said Kyrgyz Republic because that is the actual name of the country in all of the official documents. But if you go to look for it, it's Kyrgyzstan. And the stans elicit a response. And I had to acknowledge that in myself and really think about it. So one of the first things I did was see, is it a safe place for me to go, especially as a woman? So thank you for advancing. This will tell you a little bit about Kyrgyzstan. You can see it borders China. It is quite a bit smaller than Kazakhstan, which people may have at least heard of. Things you might not know is it is the second poorest country in Central Asia. I actually didn't know that until I kind of started looking. When I was looking to see if this was someplace that would be a good match for me, I of course looked at the US State Department, and there were warnings for US citizens to avoid the southern border with Uzbekistan. Also warnings for locals, not for us, but for Kyrgyz people to not go into China. And then many, many positive things as well. Excuse me, I gotta take a drink. So you can't tell from this picture, but it is a very mountainous country. The locals say it's 90% mountains. I don't know if that's true, but I will say there are mountains everywhere you look. It's along the Silk Road, so there are beautiful, beautiful textiles there. I learned while I was there that it's predominantly Muslim. And the other thing I learned is that Kyrgyzstan did not gain, or Kyrgyz Republic did not gain its independence from Russia until 1991. And 2017 was actually the first peaceful transfer of power. Other great thing about it, it has fantastic outdoor recreation, especially with those mountains, but it's pretty underdeveloped for tourism. So that was what I knew of Kyrgyz Republic and what I looked at before I went. Can you go to the next one? So for the Fulbright Specialist Project, the host institutions provide several things for you. They provide housing, they provide food, they provide transportation, and then the resources you need to get your work done. Fulbright also provides several things for you. They provide round trip airfare to get to your host country, a transit allowance, visa fees if you need them, a daily honorarium, and then you get limited health insurance program or enrollment. So those things were really, really helpful. But I will say, when you get all that paperwork, first, it's super exciting to get the invitation. And then it's a little bit overwhelming to say, how do you make this work? And ideally, you're supposed to have at least 2 months between the time you're invited to the time that you go to your country. I received my invitation in mid-August, and my expected arrival was October 1st. And so for me personally, I am so, so grateful for the international office who helped me first understand and navigate the paperwork and then get it completed in a timely manner, and keep our communication open with Fulbright and the different, and the host institution and the different agencies that I needed to be connected with. So a little bit more about what my particular experience looked like in terms of what they provided. So this is the view from my apartment. You can probably sense the communist era feel of the apartments that were directly across from me. Up in the right-hand corner, that was my actual apartment, and it was a little bit newer. You can see from the front, it's actually not even quite done. There's still some construction going on. And then down in the corner is a teeny tiny market, which was right across the street from me, where I could get some basics. And when I arrived, the host institution provides transportation from the airport, which I was incredibly grateful for because I arrived at like 5 a.m. I actually arrived with a student who was going to go to the same institution, who was from Somalia. So that was a pleasant arrival, and they picked us up and took us to get some food. And then I was kind of left in my apartment. They thought I needed to rest, which I did, but I didn't have excuse me, my cat is going to help. I didn't have any money. I hadn't had a chance to exchange money because my departure was so quick. I didn't speak the language at all. And I kept an international cell phone plan, but that was a little bit limiting as well. So tried to go to the little shop across. I couldn't communicate. And then once I was able to non-verbally get my message across, I didn't have any money to buy anything. So thank goodness I had brought some food with me, and was able to get by those first few hours. But if you go to the next slide, though the things are a little bit daunting, it really was a beautiful place to stay. And these pictures for me just kind of show what I really saw when I was in Kyrgyz Republic. There are a lot of remnants of the communist era and being very functional, maybe not real pretty, but there's also a real pride and celebration, and what resources they have are really put into certain things. And the inside of my apartment was beautiful. It was so beautiful and comfortable that I have to admit that sometimes I really, really had to muster the courage, especially the first day, to go outside. You know, I'm looking at unfamiliar surroundings. I can't communicate. I'm by myself. I finally made it out the door one day, and then there were stray dogs walking down the street that scared me right back inside because they were barking and aggressive. But when I think about my first day and some of the fears and apprehension that I had to just leave the front door to where I ended up, it is such a valuable experience. And even the opportunity to have fears really helped me understand where some of my biases might be, you know, where those fears come from, so that I can have a more open mind and experience in the future. Can you go to the next one? So one of the other things that is provided by your host institution is your food. And I have lunch every day at the university. That is part of their culture. They have a faculty lunchroom, and so there's a little buffet, and you know, it's one meal every day. Like what you get is what you get. But it was actually wonderful, and I really looked forward to that. I'm an eat to live kind of person, not live to eat. So for me, that was enough to have some companionship, get some food, and I really enjoyed that part of it. The other thing that my host institution provided was a stipend, so that I could just go to the grocery store and kind of take care of my own breakfast and dinner needs if I didn't have other. And then the next one. The other thing that the host institution provides is transportation. And I will say, I seriously underestimated how challenging transportation would be. So fortunately, I had a driver who I relied on heavily. He did not speak English, and I did not speak Russian or Kyrgyz. So we did use Google Translate quite a bit. But the other challenges I had when he was not available is I couldn't call a taxi, even if I wanted to. The taxi system in Kyrgyzstan, if I called them, you had to leave a callback number. And the number of digits for my international phone number didn't match the number of digits you had to put in. And even if I were able to arrange a callback, there is no way I could have communicated my needs because I didn't know the language and I didn't have an address that was recognizable. I was there for a while before I was able to confirm my address with the embassy. And even after I confirmed my address with the embassy, it was a new enough building that the address wasn't recognizable in any kind of tracking systems. So I never once successfully arranged my own transportation. I tried, I was not successful. And so I learned other methods of getting those needs met. But I am incredibly grateful for having a driver provided by the host institution. Next slide. So I was matched with Alatu International University, and this university is in Bishkek. It is one of the only English speaking universities. All courses are taught in English, a few in Russian or Turkish. It offers a variety of degree programs at all levels. I don't remember meeting any doctoral students, but they supposedly have doctoral programs. They also have English language programs. So it's an interesting university. While I was there, I noticed there were a lot of instructors from Turkey, and I learned about the institution had Turkish roots, and there was an uprising in 2016, and there were just a lot of complexities I didn't understand, but I know that there were contentious relations with Turkey. The Turkish faculty could not return to Turkey. Their degree was no longer recognized by Turkey. Their degrees weren't recognized by Turkey. And I have to admit, I never figured it out. I asked a lot of questions. I had conversations, but it was a little complex for me. But the campus itself is pretty well respected in Kyrgyzstan. It's one of the top universities there. It's a small campus. It had 4 or 5 educational buildings, some beautiful pavilions and flowers, a sports field, and it was all within a walled area where everyone checked in with an ID. I didn't have an ID immediately, so I was often escorted in until probably midway through my program. And I'd say that's one of the challenges about a Fulbright experience is it's a quick experience, and mine in particular happened quickly. So to have the time to get some things in place, it wasn't ready right when I got there, but every single person I met with was accommodating and helpful. So that's my institution. Can you advance? The other things I didn't quite anticipate, and I will never again take for granted the resources at KU Medical Center, is the workspace. I had work I needed to get done, and I had 2 different workspaces. The first one is the bottom right corner, and it was a shared office there were 3 international staff that worked there, and they did all of their student advising in that office. And I had a desk, and most of the time there was not space for me at that desk. So after about a week, I was given a different office space, which is the top right. There was no heat in that office. So I often would wear a coat, and I would keep my gloves on, and I would work as much as I could until I needed to put my gloves back on. So the accommodations are different than what we're used to, and you make it work. We really have such luxuries here. The other thing that was a challenge is there was supposed to be Wi-Fi available for me, and we tried passwords, and I was able to work one day, and it was just such a struggle to use their Wi-Fi resources that I finally ended up getting a Wi-Fi dongle, which I didn't even know what that was. And that went with me from my apartment to work. It was pretty slow, but it was functional. And again, the quick download speeds that we have and those things that we take for granted, it really reminded me how others do their academic work and the resources they have. And I have to admit, when I got back, I kept it because I'm like, where else am I going to go that I'm not going to have Wi-Fi? Haven't ever had to use it since, but now at least I know how to make that happen. And can you go to the next one? So I share these things, but I also, the reason I want to share those resources is because those supported me to do the work that I needed to do. My project had 3 objectives. It was to conduct a seminar on the promotion of research in universities, to teach research methodology and analytical tools, to assist in applying and securing new research grants. That was the call that I answered. And they also had some notes of what they wanted done. They wanted me to be an expert panelist at a seminar on that promotion of research. They wanted me to teach methodology to final year students. They wanted me to conduct a workshop for staff members to perform descriptive and inferential analysis and use data. They wanted me to guide faculty and staff members for applying and securing to grants. Like, this was the language that was in my call. And so I was all in. I applied, I got accepted. And for me, I'm like, okay, these are things I've taught before. And so I started developing materials, and I got there and I was going to hit the ground running. Can you go to the next one? And very quickly, I was reminded of my need to be flexible. in international work. Because I was from a medical center, and keep in mind, I'm in the School of Health Professions as a recreational therapist. I am not a physician, but they had a brand new medical program. It was in its second year of teaching. I think it was a 4-year program. This is their teaching medical hospital that they were proudly showing to me. So nothing in my objectives had anything to do about building a bridge between programs to support medical education. But that was a need. And I came from a university that had resources that might be able to support that. So some of my new objectives were to meet their faculty, understand their curriculum, connect them to people at our home institution. And then the next one. Now I did give talks. It wasn't necessarily to final year students. I found that everyone wanted to talk, but it wasn't about what they wanted me to talk about. It wasn't about stata and differential analysis, and it was about research. But the students that I was teaching, that's not where they were, and that's not what they needed. The first talk I gave, I really, like I said, I was already hit the ground running. I had materials prepared, and then I was giving this talk, and it fell flat. It was met with blank faces a little bit. And so fortunately, as a Fulbright scholar, you have resources with the embassy. And my embassy meeting happened to be that evening, and I was talking to one of the embassy representatives, and they reminded me, hey, this country has been under communist rule until as recently as 1991. Well, of course, I saw the statues. I see the buildings. Of course, I know that. But what I didn't recognize is how that influences thinking. And here in our country, we are encouraged to develop novel thought and think creatively, and research questions develop out of that creativity. And when you are encouraged to think like others, or think what you are told to think, even though it is a new independence, you're being taught by people who learned that way. And so that evolution is different. And I very quickly learned I really, really needed to talk about idea development. How does idea development go from an idea to a research question? And then once you have a research question, how do you search the literature to see if that question's already been answered? How do you recognize if that literature is good or not? And so I really had to rethink what I was teaching to focus on idea development, searching for literature, obtaining it, critically appraising it. The other thing I had to look at was plagiarism. The bachelor's degree in Kyrgyz Republic requires students to write a 50-page thesis. Their resources, they have a library and they've got library resources. They have a few online journals they subscribe to, but generally speaking, they're using open access or, in my perspective, somewhat dated textbooks. And a new student writing 50 pages, it was not only acceptable, but encouraged to take several pages at a time and attribute it to a source. We wouldn't consider that to be acceptable writing in the United States. And so I had, delicate conversations with faculty to really praise the mentorship they're doing, but also show how other countries might do it differently. To start setting the stage for, this might not be recognized as a great way to write in other countries. So really, really different ways of teaching. But the other thing that was absolutely fantastic is students are students, and you can see from the top left picture, that's homemade baklava to celebrate getting through our week and having some talks, and there were really, really lovely students. When I first started putting this together, I had way too many pictures of the wonderful people that I interacted with, and this is a few of them. The other picture, I almost didn't put it here, but you can see it's a picture of me talking about me. But that's really, really what people wanted to know, about the United States, about me and my experience in the United States, and about the student experience in the United States. So every single talk started with that. Can you go to the next one? So the other objective, as a reminder, was the faculty workshop and the conference on promotion of research in universities. And we did meet those objectives differently than I envisioned it. So I got there and I knew we were going to have this, interinstitutional conference about research. And so I was ready to go. And can we talk about this the first day? And we didn't plan that until 2 days before it happened. And there had to have been some planning in the work. I know there was at least a date on the calendar and a space because people were there from different countries. But that was also different than how I operate and a little outside my comfort zone. And, after a few days of asking about it, it was just like, okay, it's going to happen when it happens. And it was an absolutely lovely event. I talked about some U.S. Department of State grants and resources and ways that we could support continued collaboration. I learned about Erasmus, which is a European support, some specific German ones. It was a lovely event. Also humbling that I couldn't even find my place to sit because the right-hand picture there, that's my name in Russian. I think that was the last week we were there, and still I needed a lot of assistance to get through things. I also gave a week-long faculty seminar. And again, like with the students, I adjusted the focus. I didn't teach inferential statistics and Stata. They didn't even have Stata for us to use. There are some other free resources for analysis that I introduced them to, but without having a research question and data, it was premature to do that. So we, like the students, we looked at searching, obtaining, and synthesizing literature. We talked about locating and preparing grants. We talked a little bit about design. And I will say I reviewed, there are very motivated and brilliant faculty. Some of them have studied in many different places. And I did review several grant proposals. Most of them were content that was completely different than my expertise. And so really it was about organization, structure, English language. But I'm happy to say, years later, I know we've had some positive outcomes. We have a memorandum of understanding in place with this university. One of the students whose proposal I reviewed was accepted to study in Korea. A faculty member was accepted to study in Turkey. We hosted the Dean of Medicine here at our institution. And for me personally, the exposure increased my competitiveness to engage in other Fulbright activities. And our university hosted a dissertation award student from Brazil in 2019 to 2020. The next one. So that was the Fulbright objectives, the call for objectives, the work that I did. But Fulbright is also about the experience. And I definitely had great opportunity to experience a culture that was new to me. The Fulbright program, and excuse me, I'm going to read again, but their mission is the creation of and sustained support for the Fulbright program reflects a shared global vision for peaceful relations among nations. And if you look through their resources, if you explore, I encourage you to go to the website. It's beyond a sharing of expertise. It really encourages being immersed in another culture to promote learning, which is why I think those longer experiences were the options for so long. But the Fulbright Special Experience allows a little snippet of that. So if you go to the next slide, one of the things that I experienced was the arts there. I was fortunate to be there when they were celebrating a national hero. I think this is how you pronounce it. Imitov Chirolkovich. He's a famous writer. He's been translated into English. He was also a political figure. And he's known for being the people's person, a leader of the people. So they were celebrating him, and the picture of the young man in native dress, that's his artwork. He created a snow leopard out of, it's kind of a string art fabric. There were many, many art projects that students presented. So that was just one that I wanted to share. I also went to the art museum, and behind me and the docent, there's a huge, huge felt display, and Kyrgyzstan is known for their felt, their creation of felt. This was someone who really, really wanted to talk to me. It was my very my second day being there, and it was a struggle. We used Google Scholar Google Translate, and had a conversation, and I'm not even convinced I had her name correctly when we were all said and done, but it was a great experience, and I appreciate how patient she was and how fun it was, and it helped me get adjusted and really kind of reflected just how friendly the people were when I was there. Other things that were pretty striking, there's a lot of Russian influence in the statues and the artwork around town. The bottom left, it used to be called Lenin Square. It's now called, I believe, Alato Square. So they're really trying to recreate the images in their country to reflect their independence. And then I had the opportunity to go to a Russian ballet when I was there, which, being so close to Russia, it was an absolute treat. So many, many things that I would not have been able to do had I stayed in my own comfort zone. In the next one. The other thing that I enjoyed, of course, was the food. People always ask about the food. Something that's unique to that area is horse meat is considered a delicacy. And two of the things that I think I was introduced to many times were the bishbarmak is a noodle dish with horse meat, and then Monty, which is like a dumpling, and they're both delicious. The middle picture is a sampling of horse meat in an open market. Osh Bazaar is a market huge market that you can get lost in. I never went without a guide because you negotiate prices. And honestly, if I got in, I don't think I would have gotten out. But it's food and textiles and souvenirs and everything you could ever want in this market. If you go to the next slide. Also with food, one of the first things I did is, I think I mentioned I got a stipend for food. I chose to pour my stipend back into the economy. There's also an honorarium that Fulbright provides, which much of my honorarium went back into the economy. I found a company called Tours by Locals that their tourism is really underdeveloped there, but it was a fantastic experience, and went to cook with a family. We first bought all the food at Osh Bazaar. We brought it to the family. This family was a family with, I believe, 3 children, mom and dad. This woman had been working at the local mall, and you'll notice she has a cast on her leg. Once she broke her leg, she couldn't work at the mall anymore. And so the local guide was helping her support her family with tourism, and I was their first tourist to come and cook with them. And together in their family home, we made the Monty that's down in the right-hand corner. She had already prepared all of the food above that, which is why we brought food to replace it. But if you also notice the area in which she's working, this home was 2 rooms, the kitchen and another room. There was no running water. We cooked everything on a hot plate. And that was my first introduction to local living in Kyrgyzstan. And it was an absolutely warm and homey and welcoming environment that is very different than what I'm familiar with. And to be working with someone who's in a cast and was on her feet the whole time was also incredibly humbling, because they just wanted me to sit. You can sit while you do this. I'm like, how about you sit while you do this? But it was absolutely wonderful to be welcomed into their home. Can you go to the next slide? The other thing that was absolutely astounding, and I'm grateful to be healthy enough to do this, but the mountains took advantage of the mountains, and kind of like here, the topography is very different. You've got dry, arid places, and then beautiful mountains. So kind of like Colorado, the difference between Red Rock Mountains and Estes Park. What you may not be able to recognize, and what is quite different, is it's very rugged. Even the things that are considered trails or paths, the left-hand side is a very narrow bridge over rapidly running water that I have to tell you, I watched much bigger people go over first before I ever put a foot on that bridge. And there is video, like you just can't, the sound of that rushing water, if anything were to go wrong, it would go really wrong. But you needed to get across it to see the beauty. The other picture, we're crossing over just some icy rocks, and it's a pretty steep drop there. But the thing that those pictures don't show is the conversations around health insurance and healthcare. And there really was a kind of a message of don't get hurt because you might not get healthcare. And also the man who is leading me across these rocks, he's actually American and choosing to work abroad. And he had not been paying his the tax that we pay now if you choose not to have health insurance. He couldn't afford to carry health insurance, so he didn't, and he hadn't paid the tax. And so he was actually concerned about, if I ever go back to the United States, I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford to be in the United States. So he was actually the first one that opened my eyes to, hey, don't get hurt because you're going to be in trouble. Now, for me personally, I had Fulbright health insurance coverage. I had my own health insurance coverage. The university helps. I don't know that they provide coverage, but they make sure you have it and help you navigate it. And I didn't really recognize what a luxury that was until I was actually there. And thank goodness I didn't need it, but it did give some peace of mind to be able to cross those scary bridges. The next one. The other thing that I had an opportunity to do is go to one of their beautiful mountain lakes, Issyk-Kul, and in that stayed with a family in the family home a couple of nights. And one of the traditional hunting activities is to hunt with a golden eagle, which is what you see there. And we got to watch a golden eagle. I got to watch a golden eagle training session because I was the only tourist there with my driver and guide who brought me there. They had a live-in person who was coming to learn the trade, who I think was from Australia, but it was a very small group. It was also the most beautiful mountains, clear sky, least light pollution I have ever seen. So that was stunning. The other thing I did on the way back was meet with a family who makes yurts. There are years-long waiting lists for these yurts. Yurts are the native nomadic home, and they do actually use these for tourism. The season for staying in a yurt had ended because it was becoming winter while I was there. But it was really incredible to see the amount of detail that went into it. You know, there is the outside, but the inside is entirely decorated by hand-woven fabrics. And so that's what we were working on there. So those are a few of the things. I want to leave time for questions. So there's so many things that I would like to share with you that I'm not, and I would welcome you if you want to learn more about Kyrgyzstan or Kyrgyz Republic, whichever name you choose. I'm happy to do that. These are people that made my stay feel like a home. The person in the middle is actually a Kyrgyz-born Texan now, who happened to be there helping her father who'd had a stroke. The woman on the right is the local tour guide who I still stay connected with because she is passionate about fundraising and supporting her people to have access to resources. The people on the left were people that invited me to their homes and to hiking and those things. And those truly are the things that make a difference. And if I learned anything for the people that come here, I try to make those connections earlier on, because in a 1 month stay, I felt like those connections didn't really come until the end of like week 2 into week 3, and then I was going home. And I think that happens with international experiences. People, you get there and it takes a while to build those relationships, and then all of a sudden you're gone and everybody wants to spend time with you. So I try to make an effort to do that a little earlier on. So last slide, I think, is the last slide. I know it's odd to see a picture of a toilet there, but it's there for a reason. that was one of the hardest things for me to get used to. Is I was very fortunate to have a Western toilet in my apartment where I stayed, but everywhere else, this was this is what it was. And it wasn't just the toilet, but things around the toilet that were incredibly humbling. For example, in the lovely home that I stayed in, where I got to learn about the golden eagles, there was no indoor plumbing there either. And we arrived late at night and it was dark. And I was told, if you need to go to the bathroom at night, we use nature.
Mhm.
Okay. I took that very literally. And when I needed to go to the bathroom at 4 a.m., which was when I saw the beautiful stars and no light pollution, I used nature. I woke up the next morning and there was an outhouse about 20 feet away from the house. And so that just is one of the, you just have to laugh, because there are so many things like that you're like, oh man, really? Really. But I did figure most things out, and I never ever got used to the Eastern toilet, and I don't ever want to. But it is a part of the experience.
Thank you, Dr. Mische Lawson. That was excellent. That was so, I love all the humanity in it. You're such a good presenter. I did want to comment on what you said about the arrival in such a short period of time. And as you know, we also run some short programs that allow like an international student or visitor to be here maybe for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, not a long period of time. Now, sometimes obviously international students come for, a full PhD program and they're here for quite a long time. But we have noticed with COVID that it's just one of these light bulbs that have gone on, the importance of developing the relationships prior to travel through Zoom and through the virtual, platform. And I'm just wondering, like now that, from your perspective, now that, you've been through the pandemic and we're all more familiar, if you were to go, again, with your relationship, obviously you're continuing to build relationships, like how would you leverage this now? And what would you do differently, maybe, is the question?
I think I was so daunted by the idea that it was a Fulbright and a U.S. department sponsored program that I didn't want to burden people, I think, sometimes. And so I think I might have I really only reached out when it was absolutely something I had to know. I think I would do that probably earlier and more frequently. And now that I know what it's like, but I also, on the other end, I have a better empathy for students who may be coming to us of why they might not reach out.
Right.
And so I try to reach out the other way and just check in, even if it's just a email of, hey, how's it going? Should we connect by Zoom? To invite it, because I really felt like, oh, it's a big deal, I shouldn't do it, and so
yeah,
I would definitely do that differently.
That's a really great perspective. I think the empathy building is one of the greatest gifts of international experiences, is just appreciating what another person may feel like in the same situation. Dr. Alfred Adu is on, and I think he is one of the best at this. So when our students are going to Ghana, he is an active, like you just said, Dr. Lisa, he reaches out. Alfred, do you want to speak to that for a moment, and just how you've always known that was important to do? How did you know that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kimberly, and thank you, Lisa, for such an exciting presentation. Sorry I was late, but I've enjoyed your presentation. So just like you said, it's, by the way, somebody is having a birthday. Say happy birthday. Have you said birthday to them? Say
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday. So it's very important for the connection to be made prior to the visits, so that because to assimilate culturally, it can be a bit challenging. And just like Lisa said, I also realized that quite a number of the visitors we had, began to enjoy the interaction, and likewise, we also were enjoying them towards the latter part of their visits. There were some of the students that I didn't even help to come, but then I realized maybe they are sitting somewhere in the hospital and sitting alone, no one to talk to them, and I would engage them. And that's meant a lot to them, but often it was at the tail end of their visits. So and that is very important because they have very limited time, just 2 weeks or a week, and you need to get to a place to stay, know your way around and all that. And so what I usually do is that through the Office of International Programs, I get connected to some of the students coming, I engage them. There are times we have WhatsApp video interactions so that they can see the hospital, see the family they are going to be with, and talk to some of them. It has gone a very long way to help, even to the point of people who would meet them at the airport. I introduce some of them to them. They have a visual, some pictures of them or videos with them. It really makes them excited to come into a different country, but not strange, like a strange land. It helps them to understand the culture. For instance, we had some students who came, and our airports, we are very interactive. So when you come to the airport, you have a lot of people who would come to help you with your baggage, and all these people, they are not doing it for free. They are nice, but at the end of it, when they finish helping you, it's like, oh, you need to tip them. And it was quite strange to some of them coming out of the airport and everybody coming to, hey, let me help you with your luggage. Virtually a crowd. So it was nice to explain this to them so that they knew what was happening at the airport and someone to pick them up and then get them well settled in. And when they've settled in within the first, when you have time to talk to them before, it takes a shorter time for them to assimilate and then enjoy the trip better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Adu. Does anyone have any specific questions for Dr. Lisa about the Fulbright or about her experience? Alexis?
And so one thing I love that you touched on was how you didn't know the local languages and having to navigate communicating with people in other ways. And so often when I'm advising students, I say, the university or the clinic you'll be at, the people who are employed there will know English, but you may not be able to communicate with the patients. And then also when you're out in the town or city that you'll be in, you may not be able to communicate, again, because you can't assume someone will know English. So, how do you explain to someone that that is still such a rewarding experience, and that is still so, don't discount the experience just because you maybe can't speak Russian?
Yeah, I think it's hard to be vulnerable sometimes, but the richest rewards come from it. Also, some of it was me hanging on to my own things that were comfortable. When I arrived at the airport and I arrived with a student from Somalia, first thing he did was change out his SIM card on his cell phone. And I was like, no way am I doing that, on my expensive Apple phone, and I already paid my international plan. Well, by not doing that, then I couldn't have a local phone number, and I couldn't communicate in a local way. So I put my own barriers on myself in some respects. But in terms of the language, you'll find someone who will help. And I think it's human nature that when people see people struggling, they want to help. And so, people would see me struggling with with Google Translate, or someone trying to help me and they couldn't, and they'd wave someone else over. Is it uncomfortable? Yeah, but you get it done. And did I probably miss out on nuances in certain parts of communication? Absolutely. But the human connection was there. And that was I think, the important part.
Wonderful. Are there
And
any
just being humble enough to make mistakes. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so it was like camping. I went to the bathroom in nature. It didn't kill me, but I have a story to laugh about, you know, and I got to see beautiful stars. To wake up the next morning and see an outhouse and go, oh my, you know, next time I might ask more questions.
Are there other questions?
If there's no more questions, I do have one more thought that I want to leave people with, and it is on that slide because it's a very visual image. Stacy, do you have the last picture of the slide that you can share?
Sure.
So I think the thing for me, like I have definitely had continued learning. And like I said, I had assumptions about the stans in that region of the country that I didn't even know that I had. But in coming back, I stayed connected with people. And if you look at this, the picture on the left is the picture of a protest in October 2020, after the Kyrgyz elections. The picture on the right is before our presidential elections. And without getting into politics, I just ask you to look at that and think about your assumptions and Fulbright's mission to build a more peaceful world, and how my time in Kyrgyzstan, a place I knew nothing about and people I knew nothing about, might help work towards that mission. And I would encourage anyone thinking about a Fulbright Specialist program to think flexibly and think about going somewhere where you've never been, and build those relationships so that we can have a more peaceful world. That's all I've got. Thank you all. I know we're past time.
Dr. Adu, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just, Lisa, I'm so touched by your presentation. And one word that stands through is the word humility. And it's so important when you are crossing cultural boundaries, to have a heart to blend in and be patient, to understand the environment. And though I joined at the latter parts, you've made such an amazing and strong impression on me. Thank you so much for your presentation and for your good heart. I'm really excited about this presentation. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you. And I hope I get an opportunity to interact with you more. It's nice to meet you.
Yes.
If there are no further questions, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And Dr. Mische Lawson, thank you for sharing your experience with us and for introducing us to a country I don't think many of us knew very much about. It's always great to learn something new.
Thanks. I would encourage everyone, you know, it is a definitely underdeveloped tourism area. I would love to go back with my family. It is gorgeous.
Please come to Ghana.
That'll have to be next. I'll have to learn more about that.
I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you.
Thank you.